Hello, and welcome to another episode of Lead with Less. I'm your host, Tash Peterson, Certified People Leadership Coach. And this week, I'm talking about the 3 things not to get sucked into at this time of year. You might be listening to this at another point in time, but at time of recording, we're getting towards the end of 2024. And as a leader, I know that there's some things that we can seriously get sucked into towards the end of the year. And I wanted to do an episode on this so that you can do your best not to get sucked into these 3 things, because for the life of me, I don't understand how every single year this happens. We find ourselves here and we wonder why we go into our time off, whether it's a month off, whether it's just a couple of weeks, feeling really frazzled, overwhelmed, and exhausted. And I want to share these 3 things because it happens every single year, and I want to do my best to curb it, to stop it from happening, and to hopefully set you up for success so that you can enjoy these last remaining weeks of the year, your holiday, and then come back into the new year feeling really refreshed and feeling energized to get going. So I'm hoping to keep this really short and sharp so that you can take what you need from it and hopefully set yourself up for success. The 3 things that I'm going to share are the things that really creep up again and again, maybe not only at the end of the year, but anytime we have some significant event coming up, whether it's time off, whether it's going on maternity leave, whether it's taking a chunk of space, maybe going on a sabbatical or moving into a different role for a period of time, whatever it might be. I notice that these things come up again and again, but I see them more often than not towards the end of the year. And I really wanted to speak to it because I want you to not experience these things. That is ultimately what I want. And the reason I'm also talking about it is because people leaders tend to feel the brunt of these 3 things that I'm talking about because of where they're situated within the organization. So they are responsible for supporting and leading their team to help them feel the most stable that they can towards the end of the year. Plus, they're getting instructions and sometimes pressure from higher up in the organization to get things done, get things sorted before the break, whether it's Christmas or whatever it might be. And so I really wanted to share this because, as we know, I talk all about people leadership, and it's important that we as people leaders look after ourselves so that we can then also look after our people. I'm really hoping that this can be really supportive for you and be really helpful. So let's just dive straight in. I'm not going to give a lot of preamble. So the 3 things not to get sucked into. Number 1, arbitrary deadlines. Oh my Lord. There is nothing like Christmas that creates arbitrary deadlines. It's so wild how every single year we have Christmas come up, we have summer holidays, we have the biggest amount of time that people tend to take off work. It happens every single year. Yet, every single year, organizations panic and they're like, we need to get this done, we need to get this done, because they think that literally the world is just going to fall over and that there's going to be nothing that happens next year. And so a lot of people get the pressure to finish a whole bunch of stuff that maybe they didn't get to earlier in the year, or maybe wasn't quite a priority early in the year, to push and get it all sorted and fixed and done before the Christmas holidays, and to make sure that they're actually genuine and that they're necessary. When you think about planning out these next few weeks before you go and leave, is what you're agreeing to complete actually what you need to complete? So really look at your workload and look at what's on your plate and actually be really blunt and critical and ask if what you're working on is actually necessary to complete. Is this a has to be done right now before the holidays thing, or can this wait until later on? Be as blunt and as focused as you can on answering this question. Does the Christmas deadline actually make sense? Is it necessary? If people are saying this needs to be done before Christmas, this needs to be done before you go on leave, is that actually true? Is that really necessary in the scheme of the other things that we're working on? It's very easy to get caught up in the projects that maybe didn't eventuate as we had planned earlier in the year, thinking that now all of a sudden they need to be done, but making sure that's actually really required and really necessary. Here are a couple of questions that's really key to ask not only yourself, but to ask your team, your manager, and other stakeholders that you might be working with or might be receiving some pressure on to get stuff done. What will happen if it doesn't get done? Is it truly damaging? If this thing doesn't get done, what is it going to damage? Is it going to damage other projects? Is it going to damage reputation? Is it going to damage client relationships? What is it actually going to damage, and is it worth it? And then the next question is, what will happen if it does get done? Is that worth it? Is us going through the effort, putting in the energy and the time to get this thing done, is the outcome of that worth it? Is it worth it to us in terms of energy, time, revenue, outcomes? Is it really worth it to us to invest that time and effort? Be really clear and really blunt and honest in making sure that you're investing your time and energy in the spaces and on the projects that are really necessary before you're about to go into a period of leave. Because if you burn yourself out before you go on leave, you're going to be spending your period of leave trying to recover from that, and then you're not going to feel rested when you come back to work. This is really critical. And then as a people leader, get clear on this for your team. So is what you're asking of them really necessary? Is what you're asking of them really critical? You need to be the guide here for them and to support them as best as you can. Yes, you might be getting pressure from your bosses and the senior leadership team, however that hierarchy works in your organization, but it's up to you to have the back of your team. You need to prioritize their well-being, their workload. You need to prioritize that to make sure that what they're working on is actually necessary. And that'll also in turn help you. So we need to build that courage to have these conversations. And if you haven't listened to the other episodes around making courageous conversations simpler, setting and managing expectations, go back and have a look at those episodes because I outline all of the ways that you can do this in really practical steps so that it doesn't feel too overwhelming for you. So that's the first thing. Don't get sucked into arbitrary deadlines. Make sure that what you are doing and focusing on in these last few weeks is actually critical and necessary. Make sure that it's worth it. The second thing, do not get sucked into other people's emotions. In particular, do not get sucked into other people's stress and overwhelm. This is so important. Emotions are contagious. We tend to feel often what a lot of other people are feeling unless we have really solid boundaries in place around us. We don't get so affected by other people's emotions, but we're human and this does tend to happen. So make sure that what you're feeling is actually yours. Is the stress that you're feeling, is it actually your stress? Are you actually stressed about something that's within your control? Or is that someone else's emotion that's coming up? Are you actually overwhelmed? Are you genuinely overwhelmed with what's on your plate? Or is that other people's overwhelm that they're constantly talking about, that they're constantly feeding onto you, and you're getting sucked into that? Make sure that what you're feeling is actually yours, and then practice setting boundaries around what you're experiencing and what is your experience so that you can best manage that. And I do have an episode on setting boundaries as a leader, so go back and listen to that episode. We'll link it in the show notes as well. So make sure that what you're feeling is actually yours. And is it helping you to show up in the way that you want to show up and with how you want to finish the year? So do you really want to be spending these weeks feeling stressed and overwhelmed? If not, what do you need to do in order to stay focused on what's critical so that you can create as much space around you as possible? What is achievable and necessary to focus on your plate? So overwhelm is often us thinking about everything that we need to do versus what is the next thing that we need to do. So what is actually necessary for you to focus on right now in order for you to get through these next few weeks? Again, coming back to that first point around arbitrary deadlines, is what we're focusing on actually necessary and critical and going to make a meaningful difference? That will greatly help to reduce your own stress and your own overwhelm, and making sure that you come back to what you can focus on that's within your control. So what's within your control that you can focus on in order to set yourself up for success? I'm interrupting this episode to let you know that the doors to the Leaders Lounge are officially open again. This is the community for leaders who want to connect, grow, and lead with courage and confidence into the future. If you're looking for a space where you can be connected, supported, and challenged to grow, then this is the space for you. Pull up the metaphorical chair, sip on your cuppa, and come together with other people leaders to create connections, challenge each other, and courageously tackle whatever comes your way. If you're interested to know more, head to the show notes and click on the Leaders Lounge to find out and to join. The doors are only open for a short time, so make sure you jump in quick. We would love to have you. And the third one, this is in quotes, quote unquote, not enough thinking at the end of the year. So this happens a lot. We get sucked into the idea, we don't have enough time. I haven't done enough. I haven't achieved enough. And we get into this whole cycle and spiral of thinking of the not enoughness. And That's coupled with what we're seeing advertised to us. Push through to the end of the year. Make sure you start the next year on a high. Make sure that you set really big goals for the new year, your New Year's resolutions, all of these things. And yes, there's great intentions behind that, but it's not helpful right now when we are constantly worried about the not enoughness. So some of the ones that really come up under this banner is worrying about not enough time to get everything done. We're going towards the end of the year. We're about to go on leave. And now all of a sudden we're getting caught up in, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. And we then panic and we get caught up in all of that. Again, coming back to arbitrary deadlines, come back to your workload, like what's necessary, what's going to have the best return, and what's going to make a meaningful difference. If I get this stuff done before I go on leave, it's going to mean that when I start back at work after my leave, I'm going to feel so much more refreshed. That has a great return, right? Because it means that when we come back, we're going to feel even better. So again, making really intentional decisions about where you're spending your time and where you're spending your energy so that you actually benefit from that. And also remember, please also remember that there is going to be time after leave. And if anything does happen, if you can't come back to work or something happens where there's a delay or whatever it might be, then you can deal with it then rather than trying to preempt all of these possibilities so that something potentially doesn't happen. But ultimately, you can always navigate what comes up because you are resourceful. I believe in you. You are super resourceful and you can do it. The other thing that falls under this banner is worrying about what you haven't done or achieved. Now, I know that if you're listening to this episode or listening to this podcast as a whole, you are a leader who really prides yourself on doing great work, supporting in the best way, achieving well, like those things that you hold really close to you. And I want you to really make sure that you focus on what you did get done. What are all of the things that you did get done? What are all of the things that you did achieve? What are all of the ways that you made progress this year that you can really reflect on, that you can recognize, that you can soak in? Because yes, there are things that we didn't get done. Yes, there are things that we didn't achieve. And there are also so many things that we did. And we need to make sure that we're equally focusing on what we did do versus only focusing on what we didn't do. Because trust me, it's not going to feel amazing to only focus on the things that hasn't gone. So we really need to focus on this. And then also make sure that you're not spending too much time fixated on what the future is going to hold. So make sure you're not spending too much time on what am I going to do next year and what are the goals and what are those things. Like, make sure that you're also just really present in finishing this year really strong, really intentional, really focused, so that you can enjoy your leave and then you can think about, okay, what does next year look like? That is ultimately the most important thing. Because again, like I said, there's time to think about these things. And when you're trying to work through all of the stress, all of the overwhelm, trying to get a whole bunch of stuff done, and then you're also trying to future focus, you're also trying to think of your visions and your goals, that's going to be really hard because the energy is going to feel really challenging and it's going to feel really almost disconnected because you're trying to just get through things now while you're equally trying to plan for the future, and that can be really hard. So I want you to really focus on how much time do you have? So you've still got 3 to 4 weeks before you go on leave. What is achievable within those 3 to 4 weeks? What is achievable within the time that you have to create the best outcomes? What is the most achievable? So focus on that. Focus on what you have achieved and what you have done this year. Focus on all of the progress that you've made, all of the wins that you've had, all of the things that you've overcome and worked through in order to get to this point of the year. Because there are so many of those moments, and it's so easy to overlook them because we are constantly looking at all of the things that hasn't happened yet or that we haven't done, and that's not going to serve us. And then again, try and stay present to what's happening right now. Try to stay present in doing your best in the work that you're doing right now so that you have the best chance of enjoying your time off, so that you can rest and you can come back in the new year feeling really refreshed and feeling really connected to who you are and what you want to do. So those are the 3 things that I really don't want you to get sucked into as you move through these last few weeks of the year, because trust me, it's very easy to get sucked into these things and we need to be the ones that's in control of our brain. We need to make sure that we are doing our best to make sure that our brain is working for us, not against us. So I'm going to share them again for you. Number one, don't get sucked into arbitrary deadlines. Make sure that the deadlines that you are setting and working towards are clear, are necessary, and are critical, and that they make sense. Number two, do not get sucked into other people's stress and overwhelm. Make sure that what you're feeling is actually yours. Emotions are contagious, so make sure you're paying attention to what emotions are finding their way into your body. And then thirdly, don't get sucked into there's not enough time. Do not get sucked into the spiraling thoughts of I don't have enough time and I haven't done enough. Make sure that you focus on what the time you do have available, what you're going to do within that time, and what you have done and what you have achieved. Because I guarantee you that if you focus on those things, they are going to feel so much better than thinking about the negative. So I'm going to leave that there. I wanted to keep this one short and sweet, and thank goodness my Tash tangents haven't gone out of control, and so I have kept this short and sweet. There was a little snippet here that talked about the Leaders Lounge. I just want you to know that the Leaders Lounge is open. You can enroll now. The doors are open. And if you actually jump in early, you can potentially join us for the December coaching call. So that's a little incentive. So if the Leaders Lounge, a community for people leaders who want to build confidence and courage to lead into the future, is a space where you want to jump into, make sure you jump into the show notes, click on the Leaders Lounge to find out more, and jump in because it's an amazing space. I would love to have you in there. Grab the link in the show notes. And as always, have an amazing week ahead. I will be back in your ears next week. We've got a few more episodes left before we go on a break. So we always have a break over the Christmas period. And then we'll be back again in the new year. So as always, let me know what you thought of this episode. I really love your feedback. Make sure you leave a comment on Spotify or leave a review on Apple. We really appreciate it because it does really help boost the show. Thank you for listening to this episode of Lead With Less, the podcast for people leaders. I hope what you've heard today has helped you on your people leadership journey. Remember, it's all a practice and you get better each day. If you enjoyed this episode and the show, please subscribe and take a moment to leave a review on iTunes, or you can leave a review on Spotify's Q&A polls under each episode. And if you know anyone who could benefit from listening to the show, then please do share this with them and help me reach as many people leaders as possible.